powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam Kaplan's in the house today from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. Speaking of the Birds, former Eagle offensive lineman Shane Andrews is opening a smoothie shop in Ocean City. Apparently he owns one up in Haddonfield, and they're going to be opening in Ocean City on May 25th. Shane Andrews, brother of Sean Andrews. You remember the Andrews brothers there, Adam Kaplan?
Wait, I didn't even know. Well, wait, who is the Stacy Andrews, who also played for the Eagles, his younger brother, right? And then, or whatever, I don't know if Shane or if Sean.
Sean Andrews is opening the store. My bad.
Okay. You worried me. Were there three Andrews? I didn't know there was a third.
Sean Andrews is opening the store.
Really? I didn't even know he was around here.
So he has a store in Haddonfield. I don't know how much he works in, but I got a press release that basically said it's opening May 25th. It's called Smoothie Groovies. It's a movie-themed smoothie store.
Okay, well, look, would you say it was in Haddonfield?
There's one in Haddonfield, and there's going to be one opening in Ocean City in a couple of May 25th.
Wow, two of them. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Sean Andrews, Mike, unfortunately, as a football player, just real quick, since you brought him up, this was Andy Reid's guy for that, whatever year that was, 2003 or 04, whenever he was drafted in the first round. He just never became the player they thought he was. It should have been because of major back problems, and it's a shame because when he was healthy, Mike, unbelievable football player. That one, unfortunately, didn't work out like they had hoped. And you remember they signed his brother Stacy, thinking like this might help Sean get righted and get over the challenges of being ready every week, but it just never happened. In fact, Stacy never was healthy here with the Eagles.
Yeah, and then you remember Sean signed with the Giants and basically did nothing with the Giants as well, and then he kind of flamed out, and there he was. Now he's a smoothie store operator. There you go.
Who knew?
Who knew, right? I said, wait a second. Actually, it's funny because if you look over on our wall over here, there's an article up on the wall. I had Sean Andrews on the show when he got released. And the Inquirer wrote an article about it, and nobody could reach him, so they used the quotes from our show. And this is however many years ago. But I was thinking to myself, wait, when you said Stacy, and I said, no, wait, I was confused myself for a second there, and I looked over to the wall. Sean Andrews was his name, not Shane.
Shane. Maybe that was his wrestling name. I'm joking. I have no idea.
All right, well, if he was at right guard, he might be in position to be in battles at this training camp because the Eagles have a right guard spot, and he was a good one. But let's take a look at your 53-man roster projections now. We got the guys in camp. We got guys doing some things. Let's go to quarterback. And obviously we know Jalen Hurts there. We've got Marcus Mariota there. But what do we got behind those two?
Yeah, so, Mike, the reason why we did this on Inside the Birds, like our Andrew DeCecco did his, and then Moshe and I did ours over a series of two shows. Jeff's and I's are slightly different, but I could give you a little bit more insight here. And again, this is only May. This is going to change once we get into late July and early August, and then obviously late when we give our final projection, which we did last year. So at quarterback, now, Ian Book was claimed off waivers last year, and the Eagles, you never cut him. Now, he rarely, if at all, was active for any games, but the fact that they kept him on the roster, it tells you they really like him. Why? He's athletic. He fits their scheme. Super smart. Problem is, not great arm strength. He's a smaller guy. And then now his battle will be against Tanner McKee, their sixth-round pick out of Stanford, who's a completely different quarterback. Big, doesn't move that well. It's a statue, but it's got a really good arm. And I know this is out there. A lot of people went to our after he was drafted. People asked us on our YouTube message board, our community board, hey, what doesn't make any sense with Tyler McKee. And what I would tell people, listen, if you've got a grade here and it works in the sixth round, you don't have to say, well, he doesn't fit our scheme, so let's not draft him. You don't do that. You go by what your board tells you. And they had a sixth-round grade on him, I believe, and they took him there. But again, Ian Book, to me, is a guy they invested in last year, and I'm going to give the early edge to Ian Book.
Yeah, we got the quarterback spot, pretty good spot with Hurts and Mariota, who started a lot of games, and, of course, down the road, as you mentioned, Book. Running back, I think this one's going to be interesting.
Yep.
We know they traded for Swift, they signed Penny, and then after that, you got Gainwell, you got Boston Scott, you got Trey Sermon here, you got Kennedy Brooks, who was an undrafted kid out of Oklahoma. So what does it look like behind Swift and Penny?
Yeah, so Boston Scott will make the roster. He's got the most guaranteed money of all the running backs with this contract. I don't have 5. See, when you're trying to put together initial 53, this is just like the NFL teams go through. If you go heavy, let's just say you want to go with 5 running backs. Well, you can't go with 6 receivers, and you're going to have to go thinner on one of the offensive line positions, which you can do. We'll get to that in a second. I had a little bit of a challenge trying to figure out whether they should keep 8 or 9. But I'm going to keep only 4. Swift, of course, on the final year of his rookie deal, no guaranteed money. Rashad Penny, a very small guarantee in his contract. Kenny Gainwell, of course, on the 3rd year of his 4-year rookie deal, and Boston Scott, who got a decent guarantee in this deal. Now, as much as the coaches like Trey Sermon, Mike, you can't keep 5. You just can't do it. Now, they've had 5 running backs on the roster at a given point in a season, but for 5 to make it, it would be surprising to me. Kenny Brooks is no shot. So I'm going to put Trey Sermon as the 5th guy. Now, let me before we move to wide receiver, let's say that Swift is hurt in training camp. Rashad Penny's is hurting a little bit, and they don't want to put these guys in IR. Then yes, Trey Sermon can make the roster.
All right. Well, Sermon was a guy, that they brought over here last year. Some people thought, hey, that's a nice pickup. Never really saw him much. And Adam says we might not see much of him this year either unless there's some injury issues. Let's go to wide receiver because the last couple, we talked about this with Jeff earlier in the week and maybe you last week, but A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and then after that you got Zaccheaus, you got Watkins. What's the next group of guys? And then if Brown and Smith ended up getting hurt for some reason, there's not a lot of veteran depth here. So what is this receiver room going to look like?
Yeah, and they may not be done here by the start of training camp. We'll see late in July when everybody reports if they add another veteran. But so it's Brown and Smith. Olamide Zaccheaus should be their 3. He's going to battle against Watkins for it. I fully expect Zaccheaus to win that, particularly if they don't sign anyone else. Now, this is where it was a challenge for me. I took a little bit of extra time. They've got Greg Ward, who's now with the team on and off for 6 seasons, which just seems to be ridiculous, but yes. They've got Kid Tyree Cleveland, who's been around a little bit, sort of a young journeyman. Devin Allen, who we had mentioned on our show last season, they want to bring him back, and they want him to work as a receiver. We know he could kick return, but they like to see if he could be a receiver. They got the kid, undrafted free agents, Jaden Hasselwood, and one of the more intriguing undrafted wide receiver free agents here is Joe Nada out of Clemson, who's a big body, and he's got good length, and the one thing the Eagles don't have are tall receivers. A.J. Brown, despite him playing bigger than his listed size, is not even 6'1". Smith is 6 even. Zaccheaus is under 5'9". Watkins is 6 even. Britton Covey, should make it as their punt returner. Not a lock, but should make it. He's smaller. So I got Nada making it. So right now I got Brown, Smith, Zaccheaus, Watkins, Covey. Okay, Covey. Now I could change my mind. If Devin Allen has a great training camp and maybe they find someone else, maybe a corner who could return punts. But right now I've got Covey as the 5 and Joe Nada. That's my surprise. I got Joseph Nada as of now as a 6.
Very interesting. All right, an undrafted rookie free agent making the team as a wide receiver. And that would be over Greg Ward, who I guess they always have on speed dial there. All right, let's go to tight end. This is an interesting room because Dallas Goedert we know, but we've thought in the draft they could have gone down that road. They did not. Jack Stoll, Greg Calcaterra, Tyree Jackson. They signed Dan Arnold. There's a couple other young players on this roster. So what will that room look like?
So Goddard's obviously the starter. Jack Stoll's the young question. Number 2, wide tight end also. Why he's so important? Because he's an inline blocker. It gives them, when they go with 12 personnel, the ability for Goddard to run routes. Grant Calcaterra will battle against Dan Arnold and Tyree Jackson for the 3rd tight end job. I don't see them keeping 4. Really hard to do that. I'm going to give a small edge. Again, we're in May here. Small edge to Grant Calcaterra, because if you remember, when Goddard got hurt, Stoll and Calcaterra did not do a bad job. We were slightly surprised by their production. It wasn't great production, but I would call it serviceable production. Now, you had Tyree Jackson, who is finally healthy, Mike, and he showed a willingness to block. Remember, he's 6'7". Moshe and I were at Eagles-Dolphins camp in Fort Lauderdale last year, and I could tell you, Jackson put a lot of mass on his body. Remember, he was rehabbing his ACL injury then. No, he's totally healthy, and he'll push for that job. But right now, we're getting a slate. I'm going to give a slate push for Grant Calcaterra as a 3.
Okay, so that one's one to keep an eye on, though. Obviously, they like Jackson. Arnold, they sign. So keep an eye on the tight end spot. Football at 4, Adam Kaplan's here from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. Now, we know the guard spot. This is a big one where we're going to be watching pretty much all summer long what happens here. We think, I don't know, someone could emerge right off the bat, but how do you see that guard position?
Yeah, obviously, we know who the starters are going to be. Well, I shouldn't say that. We know one starter is going to be Landon Dickerson. That's a lock. Now, the right guard position, we know it's Tyler Steen, it's Juergens, and Jack Driscoll. I've said this. I mentioned this on our show after the draft. I said I'd be stunned if Steen doesn't win it. They're opening the job up, but Steen, I know he's never played it. So why would I be surprised if he doesn't win it? Because this is what we call a Jeff Stoutland special. This is his guy. He's convinced he could play right guard. He's not played it before. I get that. Cam Juergens is very limited playing guard. He got some snaps last year in practice, but he's really built for center. Jack Driscoll can do it. But here's why, Mike, I don't think it'll be Driscoll. Jack Driscoll can play guard because he's done it before. And he said the way it's explained to me is that Jack Driscoll's the kind of guy, if you need him to play guard for 4 to 6 weeks, you could get away with it. The longer you go, though, he becomes exposed because he's not a power player. Tyler Steen's got better length. For his height, he's 6'6", but he doesn't have the great arm length that you'd like to have. That's why he's kicking inside and he's not going to play left tackle. But Tyler Steen has good functional strength, I'm told, to play inside. So I'm going to go the early nod to Steen, but your guards who will be on the roster, I've got 5. Dickerson, Steen. Now, Juergens obviously will be the backup to Kelsey if he doesn't win it. Driscoll, now, as of now, I'm putting Sua Opeta, who's been a good find for the Eagles. He's been on and off the roster for a couple of years, since 2019, I think it was, or 2020. I'm going to keep him on the roster for now, but I have the ability to change it if I feel I need to. But right now I've got Opeta as that 5th guard.
Yeah, and he's got some experience. I think he started a handful of games. In fact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Opeta had to start that playoff game against Tampa when Brandon Brooks got hurt, I think, back in.
I think you're right, Mike. Yep, you're right. In fact, if you remember, that's when Josh Sweat had that medical issue before the game, and that was a tough one. So that would be guard, and then at center, obviously, is Kelsey, and Cameron Tom won't make it, though he has experience. And then the big question, now this is the toughest one. Who are going to be the backups at tackle at both spots? Because that's going to be the issue.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kelsey. They do have Cameron Tom on the team, but they would go to Juergens. If Kelsey, let's say Juergens gets he's the right guard. He's the starter. And let's say Kelsey, for whatever reason, got hurt. They don't like to move guys around, but in this case, would they do that?
It's a great question. And now, if I recall correctly, Driscoll may have taken snaps in his career at center. It might have been because he was a transfer from UMass to Auburn. That's a great question. I don't know that. It's actually in the back of my mind, but I feel strongly Juergens won't be starting at guard. But let's say by surprise he does beat out Steen and Driscoll. It's a great question. To me, they would have to sign a veteran. Cameron Tom is I hate to call him a veteran, but he's a guy who's been around for a while with the Dolphins, Saints, and now Eagles. Maybe then Tom would make it, but the problem is, if he does, that means Sua Opeta probably couldn't make it. You can't keep 10 offensive linemen because they're going to have some major challenges, which we're going to talk about on Tuesday's show, Mike, with my defensive roster. Boy, that one took me longer. I know you guys had talked about me saying that it took me for like 10 minutes to do the cornerback group. It's actually true because it was a numbers problem. And this is the kind of stuff that goes in personnel meetings about when teams know that they're too heavy at a position and they don't want to put a guy through waivers. That's always a challenge.
All right, let's look at that tackle spot that you hinted at because we know Mailata and Lane Johnson. This seems like, there's a couple positions where this seems similar. Wide receiver, corner, where you got 2 good starters, but if somebody gets hurt, you got Mailata and Lane. If someone gets hurt, then what?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. This is another tough one. And there was a numbers problem, so of course it's Mailata, it's Lane Johnson. Now, Fred Johnson is the most experienced guy out of all of them. So they got Brett Toth. He's barely played, Mike. He's had major injury problems. The Eagles must love this guy. Now, as I understand it, this is a guy that Stoutland loved coming out when Toth came out of Army. Remember when they cut him, they thought they could sneak him through the practice squad, and the Cardinals claimed him. I know that bothered the Eagles. They would wind up getting him back. The Cardinals would then cut him a year later. They brought him back. He's had an ACL injury, but he's back. He'll have a chance to push Fred Johnson. And by the way, Toth has taken snaps at guard before, so he could push for a spot. But Fred Johnson, I remember he did start some games for the Bengals. He could play left tackle. He could play right tackle. So I'm going to give the swing tackle job right now to Fred Johnson. So that means Roderick Johnson, Brett Toth, Julian Good-Jones is he was actually on the Eagles roster in 2020, offseason roster. Chim Okorafor, who's an undrafted free agent. Trevor Reed, also an undrafted free agent, who Moshe and I talked about on our show after the draft, and we kind of talked about it for 5 minutes. This guy's he played for like 5 college programs. He's a little bit older, but he, to me, would be a better practice squad guy.
Yeah, and, we're taking a look at the Eagles' offensive 53. Obviously, this offense should be pretty good. Not a lot of changes, as you just heard there. This is basically the same offense coming back except for right guard and running back. But Jason Kelce did say the other day that they lost the smartest player I've ever been around. Is that right guard? Are we taking for granted that hey, someone's going to step in there and they're going to get similar production, or is that going to be something that we're talking about? You think during the season?
Oh, you meant wait? So he was talking about Isaac Seumalo?
Yes, he was quoted the other day. He said he's the smartest player I've ever been around.
Wow, that's interesting because the thing with Isaac was it was actually one of our first shows that we did in the spring of 2018. It was one of our kind of small scoops. We said that. I know, we said that Seumalo was a disaster his first 2 years. He just lost his confidence. And the Eagles were really wondering privately if he'd ever make it. And then he had a great offseason in 18. He won the job. Yeah, he's a good football player. He's been hurt a lot. He's around 30 now. So that's interesting that Jason said that. I was not aware of that. They must think, Mike, that Steen has this really ability to handle moving inside. It's not so easy. People think like, it's easy to play tackle. It's not. I mean, it's hard. To go from left tackle to guard. No, it's not. No, not Todd Herremans did it. It took him. Usually you do not like tall guards. You rather than be 6'3", 6'4", more compact. Steen is longer, but what we've heard, he's got a little bit of a toughness to him. So we'll see. But again, that's fair to say about Isaac Seumalo. But the Eagles didn't really make a play to bring him back, and Harry Roseman did say, if you recall, more than once, he kind of liked to talk about this. They're going to lose a lot of good players, and they wanted comp picks, and they're going to get some next year.
Now, did you see Bradbury talk this week? He was asked about the defense. He said, so far the scheme has been pretty similar to what they were under Gannon.
Well, they're running the exact scheme. They're running the Fangio scheme. They're both disciples of Vic Fangio in a way. I mean, John Gannon, he learned that. He decided to go with the Fangio scheme because of Brandon Staley, who's his good buddy, who's very close, a protege of Fangio, and he decided he was going to run the Fangio scheme, and it certainly worked. And now Sean Desai, who he's got roots at Temple, he worked in this area, he knows everything, but he also is aware if you're going to blitz, you got to blitz at the right time, and we know the fans, it's the thing that the fans had an issue with, and it's fair because it's factual. We'll see. Also, all I can tell you is, Mike, play calling is an art, whether it's offense or defense. You have to know when to pull the trigger. The late, great Jim Johnson, it wasn't the amount of times he did it. He just knew when to do it. And he also he knew how to break down protection. And Desai was only a D coordinator in 2021. John DeFilippo, we spoke to John about him. Desai, he said he did a pretty good job. He was impressed with him.
You read the 33rd team, correct?
Oh, yeah, I know them very well. Those guys very well, yeah.
Chuck Pagano did his top 5 defenses entering post-draft and everything. He wrote this the other day. He has the Eagles as the second best defense in the league.
Ooh.
Yeah, a little surprise.
My only problem, Mike, we're going to talk more about this on Tuesday. I'll give you a little bit of a preview. And it's very rare. I was talking to a high-ranking NFL executive about this. We were talking about the Eagles roster last week. And he said the one issue you have, and the teams do studies, is it's very rare for 2 30-year-old corners to hold up for an entire season. This guy said he would not do that, what the Eagles did. He just didn't agree with it, but he understands it. Look, the guys are very good. The Eagles have a great pass rush. It's not what the Eagles have done at corner is not for everybody. And we'll see. We'll see if these guys hold up.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good point. We've talked about it. Like, hey, they got 2 good corners, but if one of those guys get hurt, you don't got a lot behind them. So
And we will be talking about that, Mike, just so you know. That's going to be a major focus. When we get the corner on Tuesday, you're going to hear me talk about that because that's exactly my problem with that position, the lack of quality depth there.
All right, that's over at Inside the Birds podcast. You can get that on all your podcasting platforms. And don't forget to check the guys out over at InsideTheBirds.com. He's Adam Kaplan here on a Happy Hour Friday. Adam, enjoy the weekend, pal.
You too, thanks.
Adam's back on Tuesday here for another edition of Football at 4.